the job changer, the only profession in which a person can change to any job he desires. This is the story of Tsukasa Amashiki's career advancement. Tokyo, Japan. Amashiki enters the headquarters of a major corporation with an annual turnover of 300 billion yen, taking note of its glass walls and lush greenery within. He expects nothing less from such an important office, believing an office's entrance to be crucial in setting the company's image. Much like the entrance of a house, the way it is organized reflects the sincerity of its residents. Tsukasa Amashiki is a job hopper who has walked through the entrances of numerous companies. Smartly dressed, he has come to this company for his final interview. Job hopping usually refers to changing jobs frequently, but in his case he does it for better treatment and to hone his skills, since he is always aiming for greater heights. He has worked for several major companies, but the skills he can gain with them are becoming limited. So he is now aiming for this big corporation. Standing before a mirror, he adjusts his hair and checks his sales smile, pleased with what he sees. After overcoming numerous evaluations, he has finally reached the final interview. The screening process was tough and many did not make it. All that's left is for him to get through this final interview and the job change will be complete. And though he can anticipate some of the questions the interviewers may ask, he knows that not everything will go as planned. As the receptionist signals him to enter the interview room, Amashiki confidently gets up, reassuring himself. He knows he's built up enough career experience to manage this, and is certain that his skills will surely be applicable even in a big corporation. Determined, the young job changer opens the door, only to find himself alone on a sprawling meadow. Confused, he believes he must have entered the wrong room, and is seeing the greenery some major corporations incorporate into their workspaces to provide relaxation for their employees. Noting his own absent-mindedness and entering another room by mistake, he turns to open the door and return to the waiting room. Only, he sees more open space behind him. He calmly remarks he has found himself in an unknown place, but soon suffers a breakdown as he grasps his head in desperation, wondering where he is and what happened to his final interview. Sensing his skin to be unusually smooth, he takes a selfie and realizes he has been aged down to how he looked when he was 18. As old habits die hard, he immediately considers this to be a great advantage in his professional career, since having an 18-year-old with his level of experience would be any company's wet dream. But he snaps back to reality and realizes now is not the time to think like that. He wonders if such a place exists in Japan, or if he is even there at all, examining his surroundings only to discover never-before-seen plants and creatures. It is then the realization sinks in. He has just been isekai'd. He recognizes the trope from the games and anime he watched in Japan, so his conclusion seems natural. Feeling his breast pocket, he finds a plate that, when activated, acts as a status window. Examining its content, he's amazed at being able to see his abilities reflected in numbers, realizing he has exceptional magic power, but his physical stats are lacking, since he only exercised for health during his life as a salaryman. He grows curious when he sees his profession is listed as job changer, and upon clicking that tab, he learns that he can change to any of the numerous professions in that world, all at the cost of consuming some MP. Several questions speed through Amashiki's head. Was this profession unique to him due to his history of job changes? How did the interview venue connect to another world? He briefly considers waiting to see if the other interviewees appear or if a guide shows up, but he quickly decides against it, knowing it will all be over once his water runs out, and he cannot just cling to that only clue. He cannot just stay there, and being passive is not in his nature, being the sort that believes everything will work out when you have a positive mindset. That go-getter attitude comes crashing down when he runs straight into a huge, praying mantis monster, as it begins chasing him around the second it spots him. His strategy having backfired spectacularly, Amashiki is unable to outrun the creature no matter how hard he tries. Changing tactics, he turns around at the foot of a tall tree and faces off the creature, trying to talk himself out of his predicament. But he is barely able to dodge the mantis's attack as it slices the tree behind him and sends it crashing to the ground. Observing the destruction, Amashiki grimly realizes there is no room for negotiations with the creature. As it looms menacingly above him, he realizes he will perish if he just sits still, and frantically wonders what he can do to save himself. He briefly considers looking for a weapon, before he remembers the power of job changing that he has within him. Desperately pulling out his status plate, he activates it, screaming for a job change, and choosing the profession of sorcerer. He is immediately surrounded by the arcane symbols that make up the magic of this world, as a new power begins to flow within him. The knowledge and techniques of being a sorcerer automatically flow into him, and now he naturally understands how to use magic. In a rush of confidence and desperation, he raises his hand and activates a magic circle, launching a fireball straight at the incoming mantis. The creature is caught completely off guard by this, being instantly consumed by the flames and turned to a pile of ash, as Amashiki watches on in utter shock. Still processing what just happened, he pumps his fist in triumph and looks at his hands in confusion. As soon as he changed jobs, he was able to use magic. Was this the power of a job changer? He is pulled from his thoughts by upbeat music that begins playing out of nowhere, which he soon finds out to be a sign that he is leveled up after defeating the monster. Checking his status window, he realizes the world is just like a game. Staring at the pile of ash, however, he notes that only its system resembles one, since he can still feel the heat of magic and was nearly beheaded earlier. Amashiki comes to the realization that he will die if he takes this world as a game and treats it lightly. This is no joke, he screams, as he looks at the sky and declares that he has built up a career working for bigger companies for a better life. He then pauses, pointing out that his career was meant for climbing up the corporate world in modern Japan, and wondering if it will still prove useful in a world overrun with monsters and magic. Coming to the conclusion that all the effort he has made thus far in life has been rendered useless, the disheartened young man falls to his knees. The once rising corporate star now reduced to a level 2 human in an alien world. Gritting his teeth, he resolves that he must now build a career from scratch using the power of a job changer to become any profession he wishes. His earlier experience fighting the mantis clearly showed how significant the power of professions is in this other world. So it is only logical that if he is able to raise the levels of numerous professions, then he can prove his strength anywhere. Having made up his mind, Amashiki gets up with determination, having resolved to master all jobs in this world. Sitting by the shade of some trees, Amashiki summons a water ball out of thin air in the palm of his hand using his sorcerer's powers. Thanks to magic, he no longer must worry about running out of water, so he moves on to other issues. The presence of monsters makes camping a no-go for the time being, and the basics of living such as food, clothing, and shelter are still a necessity. Determined to find a settlement, he considers changing jobs once again to a profession that might be useful for the current situation. Opening the status window, he sees he has spent 20 MP for the job change, 10 for the fireball he used in the fight with the mantis, and quite a bit more for the water spell. Since MP is slowly recovering due to the sorcerer's passive skill, he concludes there's no need to be stingy with the job changes, and begins to browse the professions list until he finds a suitable one. As soon as he chooses the hunter profession, his senses become inhumanly sharper, making it easy for him to detect anomalies in nature. He uses his heightened sense of smell, sight, and hearing until he finds the faint traces of human footprints on the grass, as well as blood stains on the underside of some leaves. The blood has almost been absorbed into the ground, indicating it was shed about 2 days earlier, and the footprints of humans and wolf-like creatures seem to indicate a hunt or a battle took place there. Either way, he concludes that he should be able to find a settlement if he follows the footprints. Picking up his briefcase, he eagerly sets on his way, pushing through the thick vegetation until he finds himself before a fortified village in a clearing. Amashiki is relieved at this, not minding if it is a small village rather than the town he was hoping to find. Seeing residents moving about, he cannot believe how happy he is to meet people again, and having no need to look for any more traces in the forest, he switches back to being a sorcerer. A young boy with a headband guards the entrance of the town, armed with a crude spear. Straightening his tie, Amashiki approaches him with his best business smile, surprised to be only getting strange looks in return. Noting his odd attire, the guard asks who he is. Realizing his appearance to be the reason for the boy's wariness, the young job changer gets straight to the point, stating his name and introducing himself as a wandering sorcerer. The boy doesn't believe him, telling Amashiki there is no way a job holder would come to such a remote place, and asking the confused young man to show him his status plate as proof. Pulling it from his breast pocket, Amashiki solemnly presents it to the guard, who is both shocked to see he was telling the truth and confused at the strange way he had of showing the plate to him. Apologizing for his mistrust, he explains that job holders are usually under the employ of the country or its nobles, or they head to the big towns to work as adventurers, so they are seldom seen in remote places like the village. Amashiki realizes that much like in Japan or any other place, people in this other world move to places where they can best use their abilities and have higher earnings, so the boy's skepticism is natural. Twisting the truth a bit, he confidently declares that he has been honing his magic in the mountains, and thought he would like to experience village life for a change, quietly omitting the fact he had only been there since this morning, and was desperately searching for civilization. The young guard buys his answer, noting it would explain his unfamiliarity with common sense. Amashiki is somewhat annoyed at being branded as someone lacking common sense, but is snapped from his thoughts when the boy addresses him, stating that he has a request from a job holder like himself, and the young man tells him he can call him Tsukasa. The boy then asks him to follow him to the village chief's house, where they will talk in detail. They soon reach the house, which sits on a small hill at the center of the village, and the young guard eagerly barges in, asking to speak with the chief. The elderly man addresses him as Zozo, seemingly bursting with joy when he hears that a job holder has come to the village, with Tsukasa finding their excitement to be somewhat odd. Composing himself, the village chief apologizes, and states his name to be Esta, finding it odd when Tsukasa presents his status plate to him with reverence, while asking about the request Zozo mentioned. Growing serious, Esta reveals that a monster called Silver Wolf has appeared near their village, thus confirming Tsukasa's suspicion that the traces he saw earlier were from a monster attack. Though the village can handle a few monsters, dealing with a whole pack poses quite a challenge, so they were hoping that a job holder like him could get rid of the wolves for them. Zozo then tells him there are no other job holders in the village, since everyone else there is just a villager, making Tsukasa realize just how rare job holders are. He then reasons that the constant threat of monsters means the risk may be high, but there is always demand for combat-ready jobs. According to Esta and Zozo, silver wolves are fast-moving, keen-smelling, wolf-like creatures with sharp fangs and claws and silver fur, being ranked E by the Adventurers Guild, the second lowest power level. Though even a few villagers can take one of them down, Esta's village is quite small, and everyone must work to maintain their livelihood, so if they were to go hunting and one of them got injured, it would have dire consequences. Plus, some must always remain behind to guard the village. Tsukasa is upset at how the monsters are disrupting the operation of the village, and his ears begin to tingle when the village chief begs him to take on the task and offers to pay him generously for it. He had already fought monsters without the benefit of a job change before, and besides, he has decided to aim for career advancement in this world, and will do everything he thinks will benefit him. Standing confidently, he pounds his chest and agrees to take the job. Esta and Zozo immediately shower him with praise at this, despite him not having completed the task at all. He sees them as simple, but since he knows nothing about the world, nor does he have coin nor a place to live, he will have to rely on them for a while. So he reasons it is best to do them a favor. Without further ado, he is about to embark on his quest, only to be interrupted by his rumbling stomach. Somewhat embarrassed, he asks for something to eat before starting the hunt, and the two villagers look at each other in disbelief at the fact that he doesn't have food with him either. Soon enough, Tsukasa has been fed and equipped with far more practical, if tight-fitting, adventure clothes for his quest, and despite feeling like a cosplayer, he sets down to track down the silver wolves. Back in the forest, he notes that the plants there are like nothing he ever saw, and thus wonders if they're edible. He then checks the job list, eventually finding that of an appraiser, a profession allowing people to determine the value of anything and check people's status, with the information provided varying according to level difference. Using his new profession, Tsukasa scans an herb and realizes it has medicinal properties, deciding to harvest some to sell at a profit, and maybe use the apothecary and alchemist jobs to make his own medicines and potions in the future, being excited by the prospect. The skill also allows him to discern a nearly identical yet poisonous plant, which he would have otherwise mixed up, making him extremely grateful to be able to get accurate information in a world without internet. He considers switching jobs every time he needs something to be a hassle, but notes that in games one can level up and then switch to a different job or a higher profession without losing the previous skills. This seems to be the case with him as well, since he still remembers the knowledge and methods he had as a sorcerer and the skills are carried over. To try this, he tries firing a stone lance from the tip of his finger, and much to his surprise, he succeeds. Though the projectile is much smaller than he thought it would be, he is terrified by the sheer destruction it causes once fired, and is shocked to find himself falling to his knees after feeling a huge drop in his magical power. Opening his status window, he confirms that he spent 50 MP on a single spell, proving that using magic as a non-sorcerer is extremely cost-inefficient. As he recovers, laying on the ground, he notes that using skills suited to one's profession is the most efficient system, which makes sense considering the points system. This is a significant discovery, since the combination of sorcery and swordsmanship would be extremely powerful in combat, while combining sorcery with the non-combat professions such as appraiser would be perfect for surprise attacks. This is worth it despite the huge MP consumption, but he knows he needs to increase his level and thus his amount of MP. Suddenly, Tsukasa's hunter senses kick in as he feels the faint smell of a beast in the air, taking cover behind some bushes as 3 ferocious silver wolves appear. Checking their stats, he sees that despite their high agility, he is still above them, so he could escape if needed. Confident in his skills, he switches to sorcerer and proceeds to create 3 stone lances, firing them at the wolves from behind cover. Taken completely by surprise, 2 beasts perish instantly, but Tsukasa misses the shot on the last one and only injures its shoulder. Enraged, the surviving wolf turns to face him and charges, opening its jaws to reveal rows of sharp fangs. In desperation, Tsukasa summons one final stone lance, aiming at the approaching monster at point-blank range. He closes his eyes, and the stone projectile successfully obliterates the creature at the last moment. Still shocked, Tsukasa approaches the carcass and pokes it with his finger to make sure it is dead, sighing with relief and falling back when the creature does not stir. He then hears the annoying upbeat music that signals he is leveled up again, checking his status window and pumping his fist when he realizes he is leveled up, raising his base stats and maximum MP. Sensing the other members of the pack gathering nearby, he considers adopting a strategy of repeatedly changing jobs to face them, grinning eerily as he declares that he will make the monsters the stepping stones of his career. When Tsukasa left the village for the hunt, Zozo had told him that silver wolf fangs serve as proof of his victory, telling him to collect them. Having done so, he examines the slain creature, taking note of the determination it showed when trying to end him, a life-and-death struggle that would be unthinkable in peaceful modern-day Japan. Having learned from this experience, he knows he must master the art of job changing if he is to survive here. Besides, there is something else on his mind. During his last level up, he noticed that his stats are increasing, most notably his MP and intelligence. He believes this is due to having defeated the monster as a sorcerer, and that different stats would have increased if he had used a sword. The investigation into this matter is put on hold, however, as Tsukasa senses monsters approaching. Numerous silver wolves emerge from amongst the bushes, and unlike the previous 3, these are alert to his presence and are out for blood. Realizing he had been dealing with a mere scouting party before, he faces the snarling creatures and uses his sorcerer's powers to create 8 stone lances. The projectiles make short work of 4 of the wolves, having their strength, but the survivors continue their charge with speed and ferocity. He attacks again, barely scratching them, but as a carcass falls next to him, he realizes the lance is pierced through, probably because his magic power has increased. His excitement at this is short-lived, as the surviving silver wolves continue charging past their fallen brethren and pounce on him. Grimly, Tsukasa realizes he won't be able to cast magic in time at that distance, so he quickly changes jobs and becomes a swordsman, unsheathing the blade the villagers provided and slicing the head of the first wolf with one clean strike. Spinning the sword above his head, he proceeds to deal with the sole remaining wolf. He can feel the power surging through his arms, not to mention that the monster's movements seem like slow motion to him now. This is what it's like to be a swordsman. Having slain the last creature, Tsukasa sheathes his sword and stands amidst the carnage, suddenly being alerted by the upbeat music that lets him know once again he has leveled up. Just as he thought, slaying the last wolves while being a swordsman caused his strength and agility to improve greatly. This confirms that each job influences different stat increases, meaning he can somewhat control which stats he enhances by switching between jobs. This is a great discovery, and the job changer makes a note to experiment more with this once he decides on a direction for his stats. Before getting underway, time passes, and the only thing breaking the silence of the forest is the cawing of a flock of birds taking flight. Alerted by this, Tsukasa reaches for his sword, but nothing comes out of it. Almost an hour after fighting the large wolf pack, he has not seen any new monsters around. He considers it would be unwise to venture deeper into the forest and risk drawing the attention of the rest of the pack. Having already slain 13 silver wolves, it is safe for him to assume that he has thinned out the pack, and he has a bag full of fangs to prove it, so he turns to head back to the village. On his way back, he returns to the spot where he fought the silver wolves earlier. He examines a wolf carcass, having erroneously believed it would have been immediately devoured. Looking at it now, he takes notice of the fur's surprisingly good condition, and remembering that Zozo told him that the fangs are proof of their defeat, he wonders what the other parts could be used for. Changing jobs to appraiser, he uses his skill to find out the wolf pelt is soft and warm, being suitable for clothing and blankets, while its meat is somewhat tough but full of flavor. Glad that there is use for it after all, he resolves not to waste anything, changing jobs to psychic and proceeding to lift the carcasses with his mind. He will bring them all back to the village, since though he could butcher them himself by becoming a hunter, he feels like he has done enough for the day, and will leave it to the villagers instead. With this, he resumes his march, with the carcasses floating eerily in tow. Back at the village, one villager runs, screaming that they've got trouble. Hearing that a monster is heading their way, Zozo asks if it is silver wolves, fearing that the worst has happened to Tsukasa. But as the village begins to panic, the man tells him it is a gigantic monster unlike any they've seen before. At that precise moment, a huge mound of fur makes its way through the woods, into the clearing outside of the village, causing everyone to scream in terror. To the guards' surprise, they seem to hear muffled voices from within the creature, so Zozo approaches it and pushes some of the fur aside, coming face to face with an annoyed Tsukasa and fleeing in panic. The young man is exhausted, having had trouble reining in the 11 floating carcasses all the way back to the village. Zozo asks in terror what those things are, shocked to see silver wolves floating around, and the job changer explains that they do so because of a psychic spell, realizing that seeing spells at work must be a rare thing in this remote place. Lining up the wolves, he explains he brought them back there thinking there might be some use for them, and Zozo finds his skill to be quite handy. When Esta arrives, Tsukasa hands him the bag of fangs as proof of his hunt, telling the chief he brought back fangs from 11 wolves but defeated 13. He searched the area just in case there were more, but finding none, he believes he has broken up their pack. The whole village erupts in celebration at this news, and the surprised Tsukasa notes they were probably anxious about the wolf threat, being a village without any fighters. Since he was also able to increase his level and knowledge quite a bit, the young man considers this to be a very productive day. His thoughts are cut short when Zozo eagerly slaps his back and shakes him around, thanking him for what he has done, despite him insisting he was just doing his job. Esta then approaches, telling him they owe him their lives and bowing in gratitude. Tsukasa is surprised at this. Having exchanged his services for a reward, he didn't expect to be thanked so much. This brings back memories of when he landed a big contract with a company, only for his coworkers to mock him and speak ill of him behind his back. Back then, it was all about jealousy and undercutting each other, and that was normal for him. Unable to stand the cheery atmosphere any longer, he decides to change it, and asks the villagers if they could handle the butchering of the wolves. This has the intended effect, as Zozo and the strongest men in town step forward and accept the task, immediately getting to it and changing the atmosphere in a second. As the butchering gets underway, Esta asks Tsukasa what he will do with the materials he gets from the butchering, and though the young man intends to sell the fur, he gifts the meat to the villagers. The village chief is extremely grateful for this, since fresh meat is a rare treat for them, and soon enough the whole village is bustling with activity as a feast is prepared. A large cauldron is placed over the fire, and everyone is told to bring whatever they can contribute from home. It is also called for the alcohol to be brought out, since that night they can drink, finally, without worry. Seeing all this activity while sitting on a porch, Tsukasa notes to himself that this has turned into quite a celebration, before collapsing to one side. Esta approaches him with concern, but the young man reassures him he just needs a break, and asks if he could stay over, which the village chief immediately allows. He leads the young man to his own house, and after removing his adventurer's outfit, Tsukasa plunges onto a bed, ready to rest for the first time since he arrived at this world. He is off to a good start, and plans to use the village as a base to hunt down monsters, level up, and to learn more about this world he knows so little about. Tsukasa wakes up, his eyes slowly adjusting to the brightness. He is surprised to see light coming out of the window, expecting it would be nighttime by now. Thinking he took a nap amidst the villagers' commotion, he wonders if it is possible there is no nighttime in this world. He is pulled from his thoughts by Esta knocking on the door and asking if he's awake. Dressing up quickly, he opens the door, and the old man tells him he didn't want to wake him earlier since he was sleeping so soundly, which wasn't surprising after the young man's battle with the Silver Wolf pack. Kindly, the man offers him breakfast, removing a cloth to reveal a wooden tray containing freshly baked bread and a milk stew with meat and vegetables. Not having eaten anything since noon the previous day, Tsukasa thanks him and accepts the offer, eagerly digging in. Carefully blowing on the spoon, he takes the first mouthful, finding that the milk's mild sweetness blends perfectly with the vegetables, detecting chunks of carrots and potatoes, and feeling his stomach filling up. Scooping up a chunk of meat, he wonders if it comes from the silver wolves he slew. As he chews on it, he feels the beef-like taste seeps out, freed from its milky scent, and finds it hard to imagine its taste from the creature's terrifying appearance. The bread seems to dry out all the moisture in his mouth, and is perfect for soaking up the stew, creating a delicious combination. The taste is simple, but it is exactly what he needed. As he eats, he feels the presence of someone from his past, watching over his shoulder. But when he turns, he sees no one there. Now full, Tsukasa thanks Esta's wife for the meal, and the chief then leads him to another room to give him his reward for defeating the silver wolves. Opening the purse, the young man lays its contents on the table between them and counts 13 silver coins. But he has no idea how much they're worth, having no idea of that world's currency system. He excuses himself, stating that he is not familiar with the value of money after being secluded in the mountains for a long time, and as such asks the chief to give him a brief explanation. Understanding his circumstances, Esta obliges, and explains that he would use a few silver coins if he wanted to buy a snack that somewhat fills him up, though Tsukasa remains just as confused as before. After asking a few more questions, he decided to convert the currency in his mind with a certain exchange rate. Iron coins are worth 10 yen, copper ones 100 yen, silver coins 1,000 yen, gold coins 10,000 yen, and finally big gold coins are worth 1 million yen. At this rate, Tsukasa's entire fortune is 13,000 yen, and the young man concludes he should aim for big gold coins. Esta explains that the Adventurers Guild sets the bounty for a silver wolf at 1 silver coin each, and though prices may vary regionally, they adhere to the standard rate. Tsukasa takes note of this, and the village chief notes that lying or haggling over the price could lead to the village getting a bad rep, leading to travelers and adventurers not accepting their quests. The job changer ponders on this, realizing that if that were to happen, then nobody would come to their aid anymore, making it a matter of life or death for them. Otherwise, the village could have taken advantage of someone ignorant of the standard rate like himself. The village chief then hands Tsukasa the payment for the 11 wolf pelts he brought, and after counting it, the young man realizes they are more than 50 copper coins. Esta tells him the price would normally be 8 copper coins per pelt, but they adjusted the price due to the battle damage they suffered. Tsukasa reassures the old man, telling him that he hadn't considered the material. Had he still been working in Japan, he may have haggled over the price, but Esta is his first interaction since coming to this world, and though money is important, he doesn't want to strain their relationship. With some uneasiness, the village chief proceeds to make a further request of his guest. He reveals that some villagers were injured by the silver wolves and are in need of medicine, but they're short on dozal herb needed for the concoction. Tsukasa immediately realizes those were the herbs he picked up the other day in the woods. He muses that he could heal the wounded by switching profession to a priest, but fears that might be seen as encroaching on gratitude. Since they want medicine, he chooses to do things their way, and hands the village chief the dozal he collected. The old man is surprised that Tsukasa even managed to gather herbs while hunting, noting that he leaves nothing to be desired, while the young man tries to play it down. Esta then heads for the door, suggesting they take the herbs to the apothecary right away. Tsukasa is surprised to hear of another job holder in the village, but the old man is quick to clarify the woman is not an apothecary by profession. The job changer is somewhat disappointed by this, having hoped to get more information from the apothecary. Esta knocks on the door of a house, and a small old lady supported by a knotty cane answers, slamming the door open and stating in a scolding tone that she can't make medicine without dozal herb. Tsukasa is dumbfounded by the old lady's brusque statement, but Esta addresses her as Gerda and reveals that they do have the herb, to which she grumpily replies that he should have started with that, telling them to come inside. Crossing her threshold, the young man is immediately assailed by a multitude of scents coming from the varied herbs being stored there. Beckoning him with her finger, Gerda demands that Tsukasa hand her the herbs, which he hurries to do. Examining them, the old crone confirms they are indeed dozal herbs, and she can use them to make medicine for the injured, adding that she would have torn a new one on the young man if he had mistakenly brought pseudozal. Raising his hand like he was in school, Tsukasa asks the old lady if she can make medicine even without the apothecary job. Gerda responds by angrily pointing her walking stick at him, shouting that anyone with the knowledge and skill required can make medicine, just like one does not need to be a chef to cook. Recognizing she has a good point, the young man wonders what's the difference between having a job and not having one. asking what the benefits are of having the apothecary job. Though Gerda blurts out that she doesn't know much about it, she goes on to explain that it comes naturally, allowing the job holder to know how to make and efficiently gather and mix ingredients. Tsukasa then comes to the conclusion that in this world, a job greatly enhances and optimizes knowledge, as well as actions related to it. Thanking Gerda, he turns to leave, but the old lady insists that he stay to help, since she needs a man's help to make the medicine, and Esta ditches him there without a second thought. Soon enough, Tsukasa is groaning and gritting his teeth from the effort of grinding the herbs with a mortar and pestle. Once he is done, he presents the mix to the old lady, who somewhat approves it and then hands him another mortar with fresh herbs inside for him to grind, much to his annoyance. He thought they only needed dozal herbs, so he doesn't understand why he's doing unrelated tasks. As he furiously grinds the new herbs, he laments that all he is doing is hard work, instead of discovering how medicine is made. The woman then tells him to use a millstone once he is done, yelling at him to keep at it. Exhausted, Tsukasa decides to change things up a little and see how much a job can improve efficiency. Activating the apothecary profession and catching Gerda's attention, he can now understand the role of each herb, not to mention that he can use the apothecary's tools with extreme ease. The old lady notes with some suspicion he has gotten better all of a sudden, but Tsukasa is mesmerized by his new skills, since he now understands how to use his body to better suit the workflow. He enthusiastically asks Gerda if they're going to dry some herbs, offering to dry them quickly and proceeding to use the unique magical skills privy to only apothecaries to dry the herbs with magic, handing them over to her with a smile. Not buying into it, Gerda stares at him sternly, recalling he said he was a sorcerer, and noting that sorcerers don't have a spell to dry the herbs instantly. His smile gone, Tsukasa feels overwhelmed by the tense atmosphere, and frantically reveals that his main job is a job changer, which allowed him to switch from sorcerer to apothecary. Gerda is shocked to hear this, and when the young man asks if it is that unusual, she furiously states of course it is, noting that he even looks different. She yells that changing jobs on a whim is unheard of, telling him to use common sense, which Tsukasa finds ironic in a world of swords and magic. Calming down somewhat, she explains that jobs are something one is born with, and you cannot choose or change them, thus disproving the young man's belief that one could change jobs at temples or churches like in video games. Though some geniuses can master their job and reach higher levels, changing them is fundamentally impossible, even for them. Realizing that even with all of her knowledge, Gerda did not know about job changers, he begins to believe that his profession may even be exclusive to him in this world. The old lady warns him to be careful on how he uses his power, which he agrees with. Grinning, the old lady notes that if he's an apothecary now, he will be a valuable asset in battle. Tsukasa is taken by surprise by this statement, not wishing to help or agree to any more demands at this point, and excuses himself, saying he's not capable enough yet. The woman is persistent, however, asking what his level is, and insisting that being just a level 1 apothecary is all the more reason to do it. She notes that even with a low job level, the more knowledge and experience he gathers, the more types of medicine he can make, and he must make every effort possible. Entering her herb pantry, she notes that in a world where life is paramount, learning more about medicine isn't a bad thing for him, proceeding to toss a bunch of herbs at him. Though there's no room for argument in her statement, Tsukasa finally realizes that the woman is a witch. A horned rabbit walks gently through the forest, basking in the rays of sunlight that make their way through the canopy. Without a care in the world, he sees another rabbit munching on some acorns, and wishing them for himself, he challenges his opponent for them. After a quick horn measuring contest, the rabbit emerges victorious and claims his prize, only to be one-shot by Tsukasa with his bow and arrow. While the other horned rabbit flees in panic, the job changer triumphantly lifts his prey, as the upbeat music informs him he has leveled up again. He has been living in the village for a week, entering the forest each day to hunt for whatever monsters come his way. His prey are horned rabbits, whose meat is tender and juicy and can be used in a variety of dishes, making them an irresistible choice at the dinner table. And the reason for this lifestyle? Well, it all started when he was being, quote, thoroughly exploited by the village's apothecary, Grida. On his way back home, he was dismayed at how his life as a job changer constantly seeking out battles has been cornered like this. At that precise moment, Zozo and some other villagers approached him, telling him they were headed for the village hunting grounds, and asking if he could help them with a big problem they were having. He decided to tag along, believing his skills as a hunter could be of use to the village in other ways too, and they began to check the snares the villagers had set up, finding them untouched. The villagers didn't know why this was happening after they had already gotten rid of the Silver Wolf pack, and wondered if the creatures may have changed their feeding grounds. Tsukasa remained silent. His hunter instincts allowed him to sense the panic in animals and smaller monsters, and he believed his job could help him understand the cause of this anomaly. The expansive knowledge obtained through his job allowed him to deduce that a different pack is trying to move in. The villagers panicked, but he told them it might not be immediate, but it would be best to stay cautious on a certain side of the village. Disheartened, the villagers returned home empty-handed, but Tsukasa chose to search the forest while hunting for a while longer. Thanks to that, he has leveled up to 8, and his hunter job has reached level 5, but it has now become harder for him to level up, so he wonders if it might be time to move on to a new place. Though the influx of new monster packs is concerning, he is still a guest at the village at present, but he still hesitates. Approaching the palisade, he notices the village is unusually lively that day, and once inside he is surprised to see a group of merchants showing their wares to the villagers within. Zozo greets him, confirming that a merchant caravan has arrived to offer them those goods they can't find in the region. These include spices, fine fabrics, pots, and weapons. Tsukasa is excited at this, knowing that merchants travel from place to place, and will naturally move on once they're done in the village, so he could join them to travel to a new land. He takes the arrival of merchants just as he was pondering his next move as a sign from fate telling him to move on. Zozo then approaches him, but Tsukasa only hands him the carcass of the horned rabbit and rushes to the nearest merchant, asking him to show him to their leader so they can talk. The merchant obliges him, signaling a well-dressed man named Giselle who is taking stock of the inventory inside one of the wagons. Once they sit down, the man tells Tsukasa that they're heading to the city of Rassel in 2 days, offering for him to join them. Once he accepts, the merchant asks him to assist in guarding them along the way, noting that having a job holder like him would be very reassuring. Tsukasa wonders how the man knew he was a job holder without him ever mentioning it, but soon deduces they must have gathered information while trading with the villagers, as would be expected of merchants. Since it's not a bad deal at all for him, Tsukasa accepts to take on the role of guard, and the merchant informs him they will depart 2 days hence in the morning, proceeding to shake his hand. The young man is surprised people handshake in this world as well, but is pulled from his thoughts when Zozo approaches him. Having heard everything, Tsukasa tells him he just decided things on a whim, and seeing the kid becoming upset at him leaving the village, he has a flashback to one of the many times he quit his job back in Japan, stating the reason to be that there was nothing left for him there. Zozo snaps him out of it, noticing he was zoning out, and Tsukasa apologizes for not consulting him before excitedly revealing that he wants to see more of the world and become stronger. Finding his motive to be really cool, the young kid gives him a friendly pat, saying that though he is saddened to see him go, he respects his choice, since his life is his to live. As Zozo wishes him safe travels, the job changer thinks on how he is a genuinely nice guy, being glad he was the first person he met in this world. He then heads to Esta's house to tell him of his decision. Tsukasa is somewhat regretful of leaving, appreciating now more than ever how the village chief always answered his naive questions without a hint of annoyance. Bowing, he apologizes for leaving after all he did for him. But far from being upset, the old man places a reassuring hand on his shoulder and tells him he has helped their village through a crisis and contributed a lot, basking him in kindness, stating they're the ones in his debt. Next up, he visits Greta, who, true to her surly nature, merely comments on him leaving. Apothecary is the job in which he attained the highest level, and be it for her Spartan training, drilling, exploitation, or outright overuse, he owes it all to her, and he reminisces of this while noting that it has been a lesson in being careful to whom he reveals his job change profession. Despite her mean demeanor, he notes that amidst all the hard work, the witch imparted some of her knowledge to him, which probably belonged to a higher level of apothecary, and he knows her skills could even rival those of a job holder. He does not know how many years it took for her to accumulate such knowledge and experience, but when using the abilities of a job holder, Tsukasa feels like he is tapping into a collective intelligence, which must include the experiences piled up by someone like Greta. The old lady notes that he seems reluctant to leave, and when he denies it, she grins, and declares that they must cram as much knowledge into him as they can before he departs, signaling the merchants to step in with bags full of newly purchased herbs. Noting he doesn't have much time before leaving, Greta orders Tsukasa to get started right away. Thus, though he doesn't have much in terms of luggage or preparations, he ended up being fully occupied with helping Greta up to the final minute. The morning of departure, Tsukasa joins the merchants, and the villagers assemble at the gate of the village to bid him farewell. The young man is surprised to see that many people, but the merchant notes it's only natural since he has been a benefactor to them. Everyone bids him farewell warmly, wishing him the best, and he smiles before entering the wagon and getting underway. Staying any longer might dull his senses, which is unlike him, but he is glad that this village was his starting point in this other world. His peaceful contemplation does not last, however, as he senses the new pack of silver wolves approaching. The merchants begin to panic upon finding this unforeseen threat, and whip their horses to a full gallop. Springing into action, Tsukasa tells them to keep the horses running while he handles the threat and clears the road. He realizes the silver wolves are targeting the horses, and have come to ambush them on the road just as expected. Ready for one last job, he switches profession to sorcerer, and summons stone lances from the ground, impaling some of the pursuing wolves. He fires more lances towards others, and when one manages to get to the side of the wagon, he lunges outwards, while the junior merchants hold his legs, dispatching the last remaining wolf with one well-placed arrow. Giselle praises him for dispersing the pack, offering to stop the horses so he can collect his bounty, but the young man urges him to continue, since he cannot afford to delay a busy merchant for a small reward. That aside, Tsukasa is really looking forward to this new place, hoping to gain more experience there, as the wagon heads into the horizon. While the merchant wagon makes its way down the cobbled road to Rassel, Tsukasa spends his time chatting with the junior merchants among the merchandise. One of them notes how unusual his work briefcase is, suggesting he sell it for a profit, but the boy refuses to part with it. Their conversation ends when Giselle, who is driving the wagon, informs the young man he can see Rassel in the distance. Popping his head from the back of the wagon, Tsukasa is fascinated by what he sees. Up ahead, surrounded by thick, curtain walls, lies the large medieval city of Rassel. Approaching one of the gates, he notices a large queue forming before a pair of guards armed with spears. Realizing they're checking the people going inside, his excitement turns to wariness, as he realizes he doesn't have anything to prove his stats in this world, and the thought of being detained and imprisoned at the gates crosses his mind. Somewhat alarmed, he asks Giselle if there's anything he needs to enter the city, and the merchant happily informs him he just has to show his status plate to the guards and pay a 100 gold toll. Relieved, Tsukasa continues examining the crowd, and notices that some people merely show some ID card and are waved through by the guards without paying the toll. Giselle explains those are adventurers, and that the toll is waived for those who are registered with the Adventurers Guild and have a guild card. That treatment also applies for those affiliated with the Merchants Guild, as is the case with Giselle and all his fellow merchants, who carry with them a certificate attesting their status. Tsukasa sees the convenience of this system, noting that with wandering professions such as adventurers or merchants, paying every time you enter and exit a city would be a pain. Eventually, his turn arrives to present his status plate to the smiling guard, which he presents with his usual formal way. Despite the plate reading Job Changer (Sorcerer) when Tsukasa reads it, it should only show Sorcerer to others, something that he confirmed with Greta multiple times back in the village. The guard comments on how rare it is to see a job holder, asking if he aims to become an adventurer, and when Tsukasa confirms he indeed wants to spend some time working as an adventurer in the city, the man welcomes him as a member of the city. Once the merchants have been cleared through, the group enters. Having heard that Tsukasa wants to do adventurer work in the city, Giselle kindly offers to take him near the Adventurers Guild in their wagon, which the young man is very grateful for. His objective is to master all jobs and to lead a good life. Even if he is now in another world, his approach to life remains the same, and in this new setting, defeating monsters is the fastest way to achieve his goal. Furthermore, being able to do activities as a freelancer in this world is great for Tsukasa, who could not do that in his previous life, since freelancing was often looked down upon in Japan as a form of unemployment. Having arrived at their destination, Giselle thanks Tsukasa for escorting him and his group to the city and hands him his reward, which the young man accepts with a courteous bow. Smiling, the job changer asks what the merchants will do from now on, and as they unload the wagon with haste, Giselle announces they will embark on another journey as soon as they've stocked up on goods, since transporting goods and conducting business is their job. Tsukasa is surprised at their pace and the fact they won't rest for even a bit in the city, and he bids them good luck and shakes hands before parting ways. With his briefcase in hand, Tsukasa then makes his way down the cobbled streets towards the Adventurers Guild. Along the way, he comes in contact with multiple non-human species that inhabit this fantasy-type world. These include elves, beastmen, lizardmen, and dwarves. He eventually reaches a large stone building with a crest consisting of a wind rose upon a checkered pattern hanging proudly atop its large double-leafed entrance door. Crossing the threshold, he finds himself in a large hall containing some tables, bookshelves, notice boards, and reception booths. Ever the corporate job changer, Tsukasa approaches one such booth and swipes his finger past the counter, finding it immaculate. Sticking to his belief that a corporation with a clean entrance is trustworthy, he believes the Adventurers Guild is not bad. Unaware of how weird he looks to the adventurers passing by, he is pulled from his inner monologue by a woman in uniform bearing the guild crest on her beret calling the next person in line. As he steps to the counter, the beautiful girl welcomes him to the Rassel branch of the Adventurers Guild, introducing herself as Luisa, one of the establishment's staff members. Tsukasa introduces himself in turn and states that he came to register as an adventurer, so the girl asks him to provide the 500 gold registration fee and present his status plate while pulling some papers from a drawer. Examining his status plate, Luisa is surprised to see he's a sorcerer job holder, declaring that there are no worries about his combat abilities, nor any issue with his age and level, so they'll go ahead and proceed with the registration. Holding out a magic box, she tells him to place his status plate inside so they can issue his guild card, which soon materializes. As Tsukasa examines it, Luisa explains how the adventurer rank system works. Ranks in the guild have 7 levels, ranging from S to F, with S being the highest. Reaching the top level is not easy, and only a limited number of people achieve it. These top-ranking individuals are all job holders, and include the likes of Dragon Knight Tillin and Beast Tamer Odoni. Another notable figure Luisa mentions is Holy Knight Stefia, a millennia-looking warrior who is not an adventurer but a temple knight. The girl passionately explains it is assumed that temple knights who take up high-tier jobs like her possess skills comparable to S-rankers. Tsukasa cannot help but applaud at Luisa for her explanation, being impressed by her passion for her work and her deep understanding. The way to achieve advanced jobs is kept secret, but Tsukasa is aware of it as a job changer. Though he cannot do it with his current low level, obtaining an advanced job is something he would like to eventually aim for. Thanking him for his attention, Luisa tells him that he will start with F-rank commissions since he has just registered, but he can nonetheless take E-rank commissions since he's a job holder. Moreover, she tells him that he will be able to take on even higher-ranked commissions if he assembles a party. As they watch an eager party set on their new assignment, the girl tells Tsukasa that the guild does not recommend taking on commissions beyond E-rank unless he is with a highly trusted party. She explains that the guild will determine his rank advancement based on how well he completes the commissions, and may consider punishing adventurers by demotion depending on the result. Tsukasa then compares the Adventurers Guild to a staffing agency that connects adventurers with clients, noting that they cannot let someone who is not suited for the rank to take on higher-level commissions and keep failing. Though being demoted if your skills do not match your rank may sound harsh in the other world, to someone who has experienced capitalist society back in Japan like Tsukasa, that's just a daily occurrence. With a certain degree of nostalgia, he remembers how back in the day one of his colleagues who bragged a lot in front of the boss and got promoted ended up being demoted when he was found out to be a fraud, losing everyone's respect. Having heard all of Luisa's explanation, Tsukasa thanks her with a courteous bow, which causes her to blush in surprise. Noticing this, he asks her if everything is all right, to which she admits she's a bit surprised at finding him so humble despite being a job holder. The young man is surprised at getting such a reaction just for showing respect for her work, and recalls how he was praised in a rather unusual way in the past for his polite behavior back at the village. He wonders how many of the other job holders have insufferable attitudes, noting that they're certainly strong, and that if one were to be born with something like that, it would not be surprising if one might become arrogant and think they're better than others. He does not want to become someone who uses his job holder status to lord over others, but then wonders if his statement in itself isn't another form of bragging. Pulled from his inner monologue by Luisa, he turns his attention to the billboards located in the hall, and though he is not planning on taking on any requests right away, he is curious about what they involve. He spots notices about such diverse tasks, such as monster hunting, herb collecting, cleaning the streets, hauling goods, running errands, and caregiving, showing that the Adventurers Guild really does seem to do everything. He takes particular interest in the caregiving assignment, seeing it requires a specific job. Examining it in detail, he finds out the assignment consists of assisting an elderly elf, with a level 80 or higher sage job being recommended, and it offers a truly massive reward. Seeing this is an A-rank commission, he is excited at the prospect of being able to make so much money as an adventurer. Being able to earn this much money on his own is one of the perks of freelancing, and maybe it's the job changer in him, but Tsukasa is really excited at seeing so many opportunities. He then resolves to take on as many requests as he can starting the next day, focusing on advancing his career. Tsukasa walks down the streets of Rassel in confusion, searching for the inn that Giselle recommended to him. He eventually finds a 2-story building with a sign atop its door reading The Tiger Cat Inn. Having found his destination, he enters the establishment. "There are cute employees there." That's what the merchant Giselle said to him when he recommended this establishment, and Tsukasa wonders what kind of staff they might have. Back in Japan, one of his coworkers had recommended a place to him, noting its cute staff and top-notch privacy, telling him it would be fun. But it turned out to be quite a different type of establishment, and the memory of this still made him bitter. His bitter trip down memory lane ends abruptly when a smooth voice bids him welcome. He turns to see a childlike beastkin girl waving at him and welcoming him in, and Tsukasa immediately relaxes when he realizes that was what Giselle meant when he mentioned cute employees, agreeing with his assessment, and asking for lodging. The beastkin informs him that a night without meals is 600 gold, and that he can order any meals he likes in the dining hall. Satisfied with the prices, he books a week in advance, and after informing him that would be 4,200 gold, the beastkin tells him to write his name in the guest ledger, offering to do it for him if he cannot write. The feline watches in fascination as the quill scratches the pages, reading his name and introducing herself as Nola. With the check-in taken care of, she happily leads him up the stairs, noting that since Gazelle introduced him to them, then he will add a little extra for him later. Seeing her merry attitude, Tsukasa understands why the merchant was so enthusiastic about this place. Turning the key, she opens the door to his room, and Tsukasa sees it is quite ample, having plentiful light from a window and furnished with a bed, table, chair, and cupboard. The young man is thrilled. This is much more spacious than the cramped room he had lived in since he was young in Japan, and by the looks of it, it will be far more comfortable to live in. When he praises the room, Nola excitedly tells him that she always makes sure to clean it thoroughly every day, since they don't want any dirty or smelly rooms, which pleases Tsukasa. He reasons that it is a given that beastmen with a good nose would like to keep things clean, but then another thought crosses his mind. He has been traveling for a week now, and though he has been wiping himself with hot water magic, he is not certain that he doesn't smell right now. Somewhat uneasy with the thought, he asks Nola if there is somewhere in town he can take a bath, which she confirms with a cute smile. Soon enough, Tsukasa finds himself in a large, medieval-style indoor public bath, finding it larger than expected. Walking through the vaulted corridors with the towels and troughs provided by the establishment, he realizes the place could probably hold 50 or even 100 people at once. A large, round bathtub catches his attention, and he takes particular note of the sign warning of the deep water, wondering why they would have such a tub. His doubts fade instantly when a large lizard man walks right past him and enters the tub, soaking in the warm water. He then realizes that there are many different types of baths built to accommodate various races, and then he gets into the shallow bath made for dwarves. He finds his first experience in a public bathhouse in another world to be very interesting, but warns himself not to get too excited, since he should behave properly in a bath. He is briefly distracted by the small bath made for the poorly behaved pixies, but then sees the other bathers begin to wash their hair, finding the pink color of the provided shampoo to be unusual. Seeing a dwarf and a beast can use it, he wonders if it is fine for humans to use as well. He switches to a praiser to check its content. He thus learns the shampoo is made with Milky's fluid, having a pleasant scent and excellent cleaning power, designed to leave a well-balanced hair, and that the body soap is made with washran fruit by alchemists, and is recommended for humans. Though he finds the fact that the shampoo is made from bodily fluids to be a bit unsettling, he chooses not to dwell on it, and tells himself it's probably from some cute creature, proceeding to pour some on his hand. As he rubs it on his hair, he notes its floral scent, finding it neither unpleasant nor out of place even on a man, and it makes his hair extremely smooth. He then heads to another pool, but when he dips his foot in, he finds it to be way too hot. Even if he wanted to dilute it with cold water, the faucet is being blocked by a scarred and muscular man who looks like a regular patron, and he is just a newcomer in town. The phrase, "when in Rome, do as the Romans do," crosses his mind, and resigning himself, he dips into the water, finding it so hot that it stings. Noticing his discomfort, the muscular man scooches to one side and smiles while pointing at a suspicious, vibrant button on the wall. When Tsukasa presses it, a stream of water pours from a gargoyle right above him, cooling him instantly. Sensing faint magic powers, he wonders if the bathhouse heats water with a magical circle built into the wall's interior, wondering if that's what they call a sorcery tool. As both him and the other adventurer relax under the showers, Tsukasa notes that living in another world's town is unexpectedly comfortable. He really needed to take a proper bath, and it feels like the hot water is melting away the fatigue from traveling. The water heated up by magic seems to make everyone feel relaxed, regardless of their race. And even in a different world, it looks like public bathhouses are still a place of comfort. Feeling renewed, he gets up, ready for the next day's adventuring, but then notices a lizard man relaxing in a jet bath. Not wanting to miss out on the experience, he heads to the adjacent tub and presses the button, getting immediately blasted away as a consequence of not reading the warning signs on the wall. After a good night's sleep at the Tiger Cat Inn, Tsukasa heads down to the dining hall. Nola greets him, asking if he slept well, and asks what he will have for breakfast, recommending their boar steak. The young man accepts her suggestion, so the young girl asks her father, a huge lion beastkin, to prepare it, while her mother takes care of the greens. The lion immediately gets to work, and after a short wait, Tsukasa finds himself before a plate containing a huge steak, a hot beverage, and a bowl of salad. The young man looks at Nola carrying the heavy trays around the room like it was nothing, noting how strong the beastkin is despite her young age. Digging in, he finds the steak to be delicious, the marbled meat lacking any of the beast-like bad smell the wolf meat had. Not long ago, he would have never imagined having steak for breakfast, being used to Japanese cuisine, but his memory is cut short by an annoying customer demanding Nola to hurry up and serve him first, as he considers himself to be far more important than an average adventurer. His bravado ends abruptly when Nola's father emerges from the kitchen brandishing two massive swords, and Tsukasa helps restrain him by twisting his arm after casually changing jobs. Having finished his breakfast, the young man heads down to the Adventurers Guild, and is shocked to see a massive brawl going on inside, as the adventurers seem to fight over pieces of parchment. Louisa greets him, and calmly explains to the confused job changer that the commission forms are posted early in the morning, so the guild gets crowded around this time, and it's normal for it to turn into a free-for-all. She then overhears an adventurer claiming a commission by stating that he waited at the guild entrance since the previous night, and quickly brings the fight to an end by grimly reminding the man that she warned that those who pulled an all-nighter would be demoted. Tsukasa is loath to dive into the brawl, but Louisa tells him he can also pick commissions with her, handing him a commission for collecting dozal herbs. He accepts this commission and the girl is delighted, eager to start the paperwork. She reveals that the herbs are hard to find and highly sought, causing them to often be in short supply, and the guild hands out commissions like that since they really need to get these tasks done. Hearing this, Tsukasa eagerly declares that he will gather as much as he can, much to the delight of Louisa and the other guild staff present. The young man then grabs a rental basket, and before he heads out, the girl reminds him that he is still newly registered, and despite being a job holder, he should prioritize his safety first. Tsukasa acknowledges this, knowing the importance of listening to others in a professional setting. Since he has a skill he wants to test as an apothecary, he plans to gather a lot of herbs, aiming to impress the guild to build a solid track record and get bigger commissions in the future. With this goal in mind, he eagerly gets underway. Tsukasa, an F-rank adventurer, came to the forest to gather dozal herbs. These herbs grow in the shallower parts of the forest, and the reward is 50 gold per herb, with 10 being required to fulfill the request. Adding the 200 gold bonus for successfully completing the mission, he would earn enough to cover the 700 gold daily lodging fee at the Tiger Cat Inn. This is hardly any profit at all, so the enraged job changer plans to switch jobs to apothecary. This job's initial skills are enhanced medicinal effects and potion creation, but at job level 10, the herb detection skill is unlocked. Using it, he is able to quickly spot the dozal herbs, and distinguish them from the fake dozal due to their red glow. This ability allows him to find herbs in pretty concealed spots, and though he cannot detect herbs he has not collected before, he is certain that this skill will make him unbeatable when it comes to herb gathering requests. Later that day, he returns to the Adventurers Guild, where he's greeted by Louisa. The girl asks if he was able to gather the herbs, which he confirms, before unloading 2 large sacks filled with about 200 dozal herbs. The girl and her coworkers are left speechless by this, and as they examine the herbs, they wonder how it's even possible to collect that many in just one morning, settling with counting them for the moment. Finally, they're able to count 206 dozal herbs. Louisa asks how he managed to collect that many without being an apothecary, suspiciously asking if he was not a sorcerer. Having anticipated this, Tsukasa tells the guild member he trained extensively under a remote apothecary, citing Greta's training as the reason for his skills at gathering herbs. Louisa buys the young man's explanation, immediately blushing and apologizing for losing her cool. Having confirmed that he has met the required amount, she confirms the task has been completed, and asks if he would like to sell the remaining 196 to the guild as well, to which he agrees. He has earned a total of 10,300 gold, a truly impressive sum for an F-rank adventurer. There were times he silently, or not so silently, cursed being constantly overworked by Greta because of his apothecary job. But it turns out leveling it up wasn't a waste after all. Still having some time left, he picks up 2 more commissions for collecting Kirik herb and Sveil herb. This to the staff members' dismay and Louisa's bliss. She asks if he plans to collect those herbs in large quantities as well, which he confirms, stating they're needed for various purposes, to the horror of the staff that will have to count them. Soon enough, he's back at the guild carrying large sacks filled with herbs, and as the staff struggles to count them, Louisa kindly suggests that Tsukasa try taking on a subduing request. Feigning modesty, he retorts that an ordinary adventurer like him should usually start by completing gathering quests, like the ones he has done. But Louisa is having none of it. Slamming 2 commissions on the table, she passionately declares that he is not normal, and that she has never heard of an F-rank adventurer gathering hundreds of medicinal herbs in half a day. He appears to remain hesitant, however, asking if there isn't a shortage of medicinal herbs in Rassel, and having quite enjoyed gathering medicinal herbs in the forest. But Louisa curtly tells him that problem has been resolved thanks to him. She insists that he obviously isn't just a regular F-rank adventurer, noting that the guild does not like to see talented individuals waste away. She then suggests that he take the subduing request to rank up, remarking that the guild believes that promoting him should not be a problem if he completed a few more quests. The prospect of ranking up completely changes Tsukasa's attitude, and the young man eagerly jumps at the chance of taking the subduing request, determined to take down whatever monsters come in the way of his promised career advancement. Thrilled, he asks what requests he should take, and Louisa hands him 2 commissions for subduing kobolds and red boars, which he decides to take on simultaneously. The girl is shocked by this, but approves of it nonetheless, noting it should be alright for a sorcerer like himself, begging him to be careful. Tsukasa has been transported to this world where he faced a mysterious mantis and subdued many monsters including silver wolves, so he believes he is already beyond the level of a beginner adventurer. It seems both kobolds and red boars are common monsters, so he wonders which he should find first. His train of thought crashes abruptly when he realizes he's been gathering herbs out of habit instead of focusing on his subduing request. He urges himself to stay alert, since it would not be strange to encounter monsters at any moment from there on, and sure enough, he immediately comes face to face with a red boar. The beast charges at him as soon as they see each other, but Tsukasa is able to quickly dispatch it with a stone lance to the head, celebrating his triumph and realizing that's where the steak he ate came from. His discovery can wait, however, as 2 more boars emerge from the bushes and attack, but they're quickly dispatched with stone lances projected from the ground. Having completed his first subduing request without a scratch, he proceeds to collect the tusks as proof. Checking his stats, he notes on how he gained stats suitable for a sorcerer and leveled up in that profession. And though he acknowledges it to be a good thing, he admits it could also be seen as a bit unbalanced. As a job changer, his strength lies in adapting and using different jobs flexibly. The more trump cards he has, the better, and he decides to try that against the kobolds. He soon encounters one of those half-dog humanoid monsters and begins his attack, changing jobs to thief, charging head-on with his mouth covered by a piece of cloth, stealing the creature's spear from its paw before it even knows what's going on. The creature stares at its empty paw in surprise, but Tsukasa has already switched jobs to spearman to attack him with his own weapon, easily dispatching it with a single blow and sending him flying backwards. He then turns his attention to its surviving comrades and is confident he can take them on. Spinning his weapons expertly, he blocks the first kobold's attack and smacks it, before turning to face the second one and throwing it to the ground with one swift swing of his spear. Once the creature is on the ground, he hurries to finish it off with a spear thrust through the chest, thus slaying the last foe. Standing above the carnage, Tsukasa smiles menacingly as he completes his second subduing quest. He then returns to the guild, presenting the tusks and tails of the creatures as proof to Louisa. Overjoyed, the girl congratulates him and promotes him to E rank, telling him with admiration that he is the first person to rank up this quickly after registering with the guild. An incredible achievement. Confused, he notes that it is not that rare being a job holder, but she counters that being one does not guarantee you can complete requests quickly, and that even the fastest promotion record at other branches took 10 days. Tsukasa acknowledges this as a significant achievement given the guild members' enthusiasm, but nonetheless tells Luisa he plans to keep working hard and aim for D rank, causing the girl to tease him. E rank is just the first step for Tsukasa, who aims for the lofty S rank and strikes a triumphant pose. The young man is brought back to reality when Luisa tells him that subduing requests will increase from E rank onwards, recommending that he should keep recovery potions and healing potions on hand. Snapping back to reality, he recalls that potions are magical items created by alchemists, and though he could make them himself, he wants to see them in person for study purposes. To further his aim, he asks the girl where he can buy potions, and she directs him to a shop run by an alchemist just north of the guild along the main street. He excitedly realizes the man is also a job holder, which Luisa confirms while blushing. Heading up the main street, Tsukasa is eager to meet a job holder for the first time. Ideally, he would like to deepen his connection with this alchemist for future learning, though he admits to himself that the vague response the girl gave concerning the impressive skills of the job holder makes him uneasy. He has heard that many job holders can be difficult, and he wonders if it could be due to a personality issue, hoping it will not be too much trouble. Having walked some distance from the guild, he believes he has almost reached his destination, and begins searching for the alchemist's house. The search is brief, however, for he is soon left almost speechless.